It's in LA. It's just off Melrose Ave. So it's a very prominent retail district.
If you've been tuning in, you already know him, you love him, and that is Alexander Buckeridge, an architect based in NYC. He just started his own architecture firm a few weeks ago, and he just landed his first project.
I'll do essentially 4 weeks of concept with 2 weeks of detailed development.
So we reflect on how it actually happened.
It's motivating, I would say. It's actually quite motivating.
And what he needs to do next to knock it out of the park.
It's like I'm there to set up a system to create it and let it run in the best way possible.
Hey, I'm Tyler Suomala, founder of Growthitect. After nearly a decade in architecture, I shifted my focus to helping architects grow their business. Since then, I've spent the last few years helping architects just like you improve their sales, marketing, and business development through my free newsletter read by thousands of architects each week. But I wanted to take it a step further. That's why I started this podcast. It's not your typical interview series. Actually, for the whole first season of the Growthitect podcast, all 10 episodes, I'm sharing exclusive recordings of my consultations with Alexander Buckeridge as he embarks on the journey of launching his own firm and landing his first clients. So tune in to learn exactly how to tackle the real challenges that every architect faces when starting out. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. But before we begin, a huge thanks to our sponsor, Gelt. Discover how Gelt can help to manage and optimize taxes for you, your firm, and your partners. Visit joingelt.com/growthitect to learn more. And now, here's the show. So last we chatted, you were about to go into a promising meeting, we thought, with a client that you fast-tracked into kind of a week or two of very immediate information and a possible opportunity, and it seemed like it was moving in the direction of maybe being your first client. How did that meeting go?
Yeah, it was about 5 days. I got connected to jump on a call and that led to going on a kind of a pitch. And it was obviously, it was positive. So I came out of that and went through the steps of taking them through what I've done previously, what kind of different tiering options of engagement we could do, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think leaving the call, I felt good, but as anything, you never know. And about an hour later, I got a phone call to say that I wanted to proceed, which is obviously very positive, and that we would get into the nitty-gritties specifics on the following Monday. So that was really what happened. I got on a call on the Monday then to discuss a little bit more on the budget, a little bit more on the contract specifics and how we wanted to do that. And I had sent over a letter of intent that they baked into the contract. And so we were just a little bit of back and forth, a little bit for me scrambling as well in terms of there's stuff in there that is new to me that I'm dealing with myself in terms of the intellectual property and stuff like that. So I did my best, let's just say right now with what I could. And then at the same time, it's a very expedited schedule. The way this is formatted is I'll do essentially 4 weeks of concept with 2 weeks of detailed development, which I'll work with contractor who will step in and take over drawing sets, fabricate, shop drawings, everything, permitting. Won't be too much required. It's ultimately interior renovation, some electrical. And yeah, it's very exciting. It's in LA. It's just off Melrose Ave. So it's a very prominent retail district in the city. It's in West Hollywood, which is nice. For me, it was a great moment to actually have flown out there just last week to see the site, to meet the clients. It's all happening very fast. But yeah, it all went through those different steps and it all happened very instantly. So yeah, I'm already kicking off concept today, Monday. It's all running.
That is so awesome. And huge congratulations. And I'm so excited for you. I know you texted me over the weekend. I was just getting ready to go on a trip, or else I was like, I would love to jump on a call and celebrate in some way. But you had texted me later that day, actually, when we had recorded the previous episode and said that you got it. And we were just getting in the car, getting ready to go on a road trip, I remember. And I told my wife, I was like, Alex got the project, and we did a little celebration as a family for you.
It's a nice moment to get to that point, even on this journey with yourself or with anyone else that has been around me. It's everyone thinks about taking that leap, right? Taking that jump out to go out by yourself. And it's scary. It's challenging. You don't know what's going to happen. But for when these moments do happen, it feels a level of this could work. This can be something. And you're starting to get a sense of this brand or this business taking you on a journey. And that's how I feel actually since I've started this, that I feel like I'm putting this vision out there and I'm going with it. And I'm really enjoying the people that are coming into it and being part of it. I've been sure you get that journey yourself too. It's motivating, I would say. It's actually quite motivating.
It should be motivating. We've talked about this a little bit before, but I'm not sure if we've dove into it because I get mixed up now. What's the mixture between our private conversations and our recorded consultations here? But you did it right in the sense that you gave yourself necessary padding, right? You saved up money and you said, okay, I'm giving myself the time to start this business correctly. And you didn't formally launch that business until this month. And so you actually came in and you landed what I would consider to be an ideal client. Like literally to me, it seems like what would quite literally be like a perfect representation of your ideal client.
Yeah.
Right? And you did it within a month of launching your new practice, which is incredible. It's so incredible. And I think that's because you gave yourself the space. You planned out the launch. You put a lot of work onto the back end that like clients aren't going to see. But obviously we see now that we've been doing this podcast for this long, or these consultations for that long. But I'm curious to know if you think that now you've landed the first project, and there's first of many, but getting to this first project, was it more or less work than you anticipated it to be?
No, it's definitely more work. I think you need to have a lot of irons in the fire. And I think that's something that will be forever the situation. I think that, of course, it's a lot of hustle, but it's a lot of conversations and opening doors and teasing out different opportunities. And are they really, and that filtering process. So it really comes down to a lot of the fundamentals of what we've been discussing around the business development, pipeline, how to initiate that, how to find that niche that you're looking for. And it's all a discovery process for me right now. And it's a lot of new information being taken on board. And this is a good case study of an example where it did play out well. And this was due to the emails we had sent out to whenever it was 90 people. And even just following up with them individually, each person, and then having to send them, because of like warm-up emails, I had to send them almost individually as well. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of thought behind it to get to the point. I think there's a lot of, like, for me, it was a lot of appreciation of, also this client taking my first proper project, in terms of there's a lot of appreciation for giving me that chance, because there's a lot of people sitting on the fence. There's a lot of people who potentially do have stuff going on and but they're sitting there. And I think that I was glad there was someone who would take that jump, and then you go through that journey then with them.
Yeah, you're right. It does take a little bit of a first adopter perspective from those clients. But it's the first adopter for you in terms of, you started your own practice, but this is your bread and butter.
Yeah. And also the transition has actually been quite nice. I've been discussing it recently. I was chatting with a friend and I was saying that, like, when you're in the mentality of the last year of thinking about what you're doing, your business, building it up, meeting people as your own entity, I think the transition was a little bit more gradual and it was a bit more seamless in terms of when I transitioned out to myself. I already had systems in place. I already had thought about different things. And I think that has all helped with this kind of like being out by myself and feeling like, bar some contractual things that are still a bit out of my wheelhouse and the more admin end of it, I think otherwise it feels like it's the natural progression through. And I think project typology helps. I think that obviously I'm working through that network that I've loosely known. So that helps.
Yeah. Having the experience that you've had is perfect, right? You've worked in a lot of different areas of a business, and then also having the chance to be a director and having people work underneath you, I think is really important too, especially as you continue to possibly get more projects and consider scaling and what that looks like in terms of managing a team, because that's a whole nother animal. That's a whole nother animal that's difficult to manage too. And it is crazy to think that all of these are things that you have to tackle when you make that decision to run an architecture firm, right? You think that you're making the decision to finally be in a position where you get to pursue your own vision for your projects. And then you realize it's not totally your vision. It's more the client's vision that you're helping to execute.
Yeah.
You put your touch on. And then you're like, I can run my own business. And then you realize, well, you're going to have to bring in a team, and all of those team members are going to have their own personality as well. And you're going to need to find the ways to adapt that and build that culture. And then you got to go out and get those projects. People don't just come to you. And so there's so many parts to it. But a few months into it, I just feel like you're navigating it so well. So it's encouraging to see, and I hope that it's motivating for everyone else that's followed along the process too.
Yeah, and it's been nice. I have had some people reach out to me on Instagram and stuff who have said, I'm thinking about doing that as well. And I even reached out and said, let's grab a coffee when I was in LA, and I met one or two people who just been following me loosely. I don't know them at all. And some of them just got into professional practice now and left education. And it's been quite nice because, again, as I'm saying, the people are feeding into this journey you're on, and they're interested in also going on their own. And so I hope it is an example of this. People were saying like, oh, what did you have set up? And it is true. There is no right time to do this. I think you do need a base level of like understanding of how projects are run, teams are run, people, and you need some business acumen around it, but not all of it. You don't need it all polished. You don't need it all figured out. I think the biggest part is probably the leap. Realistically, like the actual jump with a cushion as well. You'd want yourself a nice, a little rainy day for whatever we said, 3 to 6 months, I think, and then just give it a blast. Yeah, well, you start to feel like it can work.
Yes. When you see the light, not even the light at the end of the tunnel,
That's
is the wrong way to say it, but like a step forward.
it's like a slither. You can see that there's light further in the distance that you're walking towards, and you're like, okay, there's a direction now. I can see a path unfolding. And then it gives you that optimism and enthusiasm to keep going. And these are all small things. The small things are a big deal. Even if I'm meeting someone and they're interested in what I do and supporting what I do, that makes me feel it's all worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, architects, how much of your hard-earned money is getting captured by taxes each year? Probably too much. Here's the problem. Taxes are complicated, ever-changing, and frankly, they just give me a headache, which is why I joined Gelt earlier this year. Gelt provides tax solutions tailored to businesses and individuals just like you and your architecture firm. Their seamless integration of business and personal taxes ensures that your tax strategy is fully optimized. On my first call with the Gelt team, they shared tens of thousands of dollars worth of extra deductions that I can take this year, and I was completely blown away. When you join Gelt, you get your own team of tax advisors that understand your unique challenges, plus access to the Gelt platform, which makes managing your taxes easy and worry-free. Frankly, it's just been a huge weight off my shoulders since I joined Gelt. And Gelt loves architects so much that they're providing an exclusive offer of 10% off your first year just for Growthitect listeners. So visit joingelt.com/growthitect to rest assured knowing that your taxes are taken care of. That's joingelt.com/growth, to claim your 10% off. And now, back to the show. So now that you've landed this project, how much of your time are you planning to devote to it? Because that is a very short timeline. And basically, you have 6 weeks. You have a 6-week sprint happening, right?
Basically, yeah. I'm a 6-week sprint, and then I've oversight for the following 6 weeks to whatever it ends up actually being. But that's a real challenge right now, because I was overseeing and managing majority of the time while I was in my previous role. And so I was dealing with that end of it. And now it's more getting back into the weeds, and back out with sketching, back out with drawing, back out with getting into 3D and stuff fundamentally that I shouldn't be doing as a big picture. But I think for right now, it's good for me to sit down and figure out my systems. And it's actually a perfect project, I will say, for figuring out how I'm going to put my decks together and what that format looks like, and how am I going to use it's all workflow, my model, how am I layering it, how is it going to be? So then the idea for me is that, like, going through all that, I'll be able to bring people in, and they'll be able to follow a pretty straightforward system. But I will say that it's taking up close to all my time in concept if it's 6 weeks, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to balance that a little bit with making sure I'm still checking in with people, making sure that I'm still putting my voice out there on social media, so that it's not a black hole that I've suddenly gone into, which I'm absolutely can see the black hole occurring, and you're designing this thing, and you're buried under sketch roll, and you're just focused on that. And this is a huge priority for me. There's no doubt. I need this to be executed at a high level on a short period of time, and it's a very important stepping stone. So I'm trying to balance that out right now.
Yeah. You said something that's really important, though, in terms of this being your first project. And I think it's something that's easy to overlook, but I think it comes from two things. One is that you're thinking about the future and you have intentions of scaling the firm to some extent. We haven't really talked about what you want this to be yet, but I'm sure you have a vision. It sounds to me like of some to the point where you're going to have maybe 5 or 10 people total. And I'm not saying like within the first year, but maybe within the first few years, you might have that amount of people. And so you're being really operationally minded about it, meaning that you're starting something. You're like, okay, if I'm going to be doing this, how will I teach someone else?
Yeah, that's right.
And I have a process in place. Is everything that I'm doing possible to be replicated by someone else? And I think that's a really important way to think about it. And it's not that the way that you're doing it now has to be the way that it is in 6 months. There has to be exactly the way that it is when you finally do decide to bring on additional support. But thinking about that way now makes it so much easier and helps you plan for in a few months when it does make sense to bring on that additional support and you have already been thinking that way. You might already have Loom recordings or SOPs in place, like standard operating procedures in place. Some of these things that just make it significantly easier and more seamless to bring on that additional help. So I think that's really important. You've got like a cheat code going on right now. Like you're thinking this isn't a one-time thing. I'm going to be doing these same processes over and over and over again. So how can I make it more repeatable? How can I optimize that process? How can I make it easier for not just myself to do it, but for everyone else to do it too? So that's really important.
I think that's something that I've either been always conscious of or reading. It's having, as the business leader or whatever you want to call it, it's like I'm there to set up a system to create it and let it run in the best way possible that gives everyone that comes into it the ability to do great work, to be contributing to something. And I feel that's my role now, is to set that line, like that kind of chain for people to come in. And I am already thinking about if I'm bringing people in to help me with renderings, 3D, putting the deck together. Right now, I need to have the right package to say, make it easier for them to be like, I get it. That work makes sense. I can do that exercise without me losing too much time over explaining. So that's the interesting thing right now, is where it's like, it's good. I'm like, let me get this system somewhat good and figure out, and then let me figure out how I'm going to share it. Like even the softwares that we're all using right now, like it is very different, whether it's for presentations or whether it's what I'm using to render or whatnot. It's a lot of it now you can jump in and just be on the cloud. And I feel like I want to be as flexible as possible and dynamic. So everything that I want to use in the business, I want others to be able to just jump in, and not as much barriers and walls and all that stuff, which it was there when I started my journey in architecture. It was like you had a hard drive, you plugged in the hard drive, you had all these crack softwares that you were trying to get in. It was just such a much more complicated thing. And now it's a very interesting moment for starting a business, because you just don't know what the possibility is and what extent you need people and production in it because of everything that's going on. So it's actually, that's something I'm thinking about and how I want it to be.
Yeah, you mean like for almost building out the software stack, right? You want that to be readily accessible and
easily for me to call someone and say, hey, can you jump in here, do that? Hey, I'm bringing in someone that I've not worked with before, which is a big thing, right? At the start, you're probably going to bring in people that you've not had that much experience. And then it's like, how can they easily get through the steps? My first hire won't be a project manager.
Right.
It's going to be somewhere on a more junior level. So it's being able to have that structure for them to be able to do what they do. And it's just interesting. Again, are we all in studio? Are we all remote? These are all bigger questions about like how this is going to work and what my lifestyle is and what I want from this business, rather than, so it's all stuff figuring out as I go here.
Yeah. But it's important to be asking those questions now rather than later. I can tell you, I pretty much made this mistake because I went and started my own design studio because I was like, I want to be in control of my time, which, by the way, don't start a business if that's your goal, because you're not going to be in control of your time. And I also wanted to be location independent, and I forgot about the second half of that. And I realized like 2 years into it, I was like, I'm not location independent at all. All of my projects are local. I built all of this network and these relationships locally. And there's nothing like, if I leave where I'm at, I don't have work. Even though I knew that this is one of the things that I wanted, the location independence, but then I realized I'd put myself into a position where it was going to be really difficult for me to be location independent in what I was doing. Thinking about it now and being not giving up on that, because I think there is always a way to get to that. You're doing a bit of lifestyle design, right? You're designing around the lifestyle that you want. And I think that there is, for the most part, a way to get there. There's a way to design that lifestyle that you want. It's just that it's probably not a common path. It's a unique practice that you're building, like a typical architecture firm, right? You're not trying to find an office to rent in New York City and growing a local team and only doing projects in the city. Like, you're doing projects all over the world that we've talked about, right? You've talked about hiring a remote team, a global team as well. And so what you're starting is what I would consider to be personally like the future of the practice. I hope that more architects are moving in this direction because I think it's healthier. I think it's better. I think this is where the world is going. I think this is how you get the most talented team and produce the best work and do all of these things. But it's not a common path. So you're forging away a little bit.
Yeah. And that's the part where I'm like, when you're always foreseeing and looking out for models to look at and, that looks really good. And how did they do that? I think with this one, I'm not too sure how this is going to play out. In my mind, I have ideas around having some core people here but ultimately being a lot more flexible and dynamic between Europe and the US and so forth. And it's just like figuring out how that actually will play out. And I think it's listening to what people want as well. At my previous role, and I would have dealt with a lot of the ins and outs with the individuals, they wanted to have the ability to work from wherever. They wanted to have that flexibility. And I think that will become more prevalent. That will just keep becoming a thing. And if that's what they want, why not give it? And that's what I want as well. Eventually figuring out what that culture is, how do you sustain it? It'll be bigger questions down the line. When do we get together? So yeah, I've like a lot of unknowns there going on around how that's all going to play out. But then other companies in different industries have been doing this for
forever. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Architecture is decades behind. Yeah, for sure.
We're decades behind. And I think it's just, again, it's a systems thing. And it's like how I know it's a tangible thing that we're in terms of things are getting built physically. I've been working globally and you land in somewhere and you work, you can do sprints of 2 weeks and you have a very personal relationship with the client, the contractor, and you just, you leave and you put all your energy in that period. Yeah, it's a good conversation because I think it's one for a lot of people to think about as they go out at this moment in time and over the next few years.
Yeah. And hopefully who's ever listening, you didn't hear it. Hopefully this isn't the first time that you've heard it, but let's just make this very clear. There's a lot of things that you don't know when you're starting a business and you have a vision for what you want that to be. And I think the most important thing that you're doing is that you're making progress rather than just making movements, meaning you're moving in a direction, right? You're making progress in a specific direction rather than just like moving around, but not actually moving toward anything, right? It's like sitting in place or it's like running, the difference between running in place and actually walking in a direction. And sometimes it's better to slowly walk in the direction that you want rather than to run in place and make a lot of movements. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the vision. All right. Thanks for being a Growthitect and listening in on this consultation with Alexander Buckeridge. Be sure to subscribe so you can continue to learn exactly how to overcome the challenges that every architect faces when starting a firm. Check out the show notes for links to everything that was mentioned. Lastly, make sure you go to growthitect.com/join to join more than 5,000 architects getting one quick and simple business growth hack in their inbox every Sunday morning from me. I'll see you in the next episode.